I have to give you a little backstory to this story. Actually, this is prose, but it's poetic enough, I think, that it can pass. And it's out of a collection that's obviously been published, so and it's available. You can get this collection of works is called "The Milk of Almonds." Italian-American women writers on food and culture. And I was asked to write about food. I couldn't help writing about love and food. They sort of matched me. Anyway, this is, those of you who know whom I'm married to, it's a guy who is fierce in his detestation of ivy. When we first moved to Bridgeton, that's all he saw. All that ivy going up the hill, choking the trees and so on. Got to get rid of that ivy. So he yanked a lot of it down. I don't know if you know that he yanked it down off our property anyway, and got roundly scolded by the folks who thought he was tearing out the winter jasmine, which I think has just sort of burst into small bloom along the wall of 55 West Commerce Street. But anyway, if he could pull out all the ivy in Bridgeton, he would. But this goes back to when we first met, and I was living in Patterson, and I was seeking the cheapest and simplest form of landscaping, and ivy was perfect. So, but Sandy, the minute he came to, moved in, was just appalled. He could not wait to tear it out. It was as if that ivy stood, because I was previously married, for the memory of anything in my life before he'd come into it. As if it stood for memory itself. So at last I said yes, he could tear it out if he planted daylilies, which he did, and if he put comfrey along the new fence my good neighbor had put between our yards, and spring onions, which he also did. But the lawn. At first he simply mowed it in a dutiful way, which what was left of it after the impatiens and peonies, not letting on, perhaps still unsure himself what he would do with it. On the north side of the house, just beyond the beach and the square of shadow of house and tree, it was, after all, nothing more than a somewhat arable patch. By the way, I haven't told you that the name of this story is Love Lettuce. Get it? Lettuce. Get it? Yeah. Anyway, not really fit for gardening. And yet gardening there must be. Even as we began to talk about getting married and staying on in this old house which he loved, Sandy seemed to become slowly possessed with a kind of madness, a kind of holy gardening madness. It comes to me now that the real onset of this possession was a trip we took to New Hampshire together to see my old haunts, and because I'd lived in New Hampshire for a while, and visit friends from the days I used to go up there to write. Rick and Jerry, especially, two of the gentlest, happiest, funniest, earth-eyed, back-to-the-land dreamers who ever invested their savings on a cantle of old farmstead on the Blackwater River. To grow dirt, as Rick said, for an organic farm. But they were growing crops. And harvest was in full blaze when we got there. The whole miraculous works of it. Canning in full tilt. In the summer kitchen, that mascara is killing me. Herbs and flowers everywhere. That grooved landscape just radiating Earth Mother energy. And I think as he took in all that succulent ripeness, something in Sandy seemed to fall into its sacred place, fruit of the earth and work of human hands, like a piece of liturgy. We learned that Rick and Jerry got their seed from an organic cooperative in Maine called Fedco. The 60s had never died in Fedco land. It still hasn't, by the way. Anybody get their seed from Fedco? It's a fantastic place. A place with a heart and a dry and witty Yankee catalog writing style to keep it from going soggy. We pored over their catalog that winter like Paolo and Francesca over Camelot adulteries. The most luscious bits of all, best read in bed together, were the descriptions of lettuce, divided into delicious whimsy into sections called Let Us Begin and Let Us Continue, just so novices like us would know that lettuce has at least 2 seasons. So what if our first crop degraded in July into a forest of seedy perdition? As soon as the summer heat was gone, there'd be another crop, its heads just as round and sweet, its leaves just as lusciously green and pink and purple and gold. We might gather us greens and go right on gathering them long into the shortening days, till the cold that had first braced their leafy shoots in the spring finally struck too deep in November and froze them translucent. The very thought of lettuce, so tender and near sempiternal, seemed to raise Sandy to new heights of gardening passion. He finally tore up the entire crabgrass lawn on the north side of the house, and I was glad to see it go, if only to envision in its place our own north country, perfect for lettuce, the slant sun in the morning, the cooling shade at the hottest part of the day, the mild final rays cutting deep into the yard over the housetops to the west, toasting the tips of the red hiver. And what stupendous first lettuce crop that was. Growing in bouquets like cabbage roses, better than roses. Sandy would crowd the heads together in a basket and present them to me as if they could be carried down the aisle. And if we hadn't got married in August, between crops, I think I would have.